Hey everybody, welcome to Back Issues. I'm Sal.
I'm Ethan.
I'm Ben.
We're going to talk about Spawn today. Now, some of you longtime fans might be like, what? You did 2 whole episodes about Spawn.
Yeah.
Technically, it was 1 episode that was split into 2. It was long ago, back when YouTube was like, that can't be that long.
This was
can't
a
do
long
that.
time ago.
Yeah, but the reason why we're talking about Spawn is because I feel like we really didn't give Spawn his due when we did those 2 full episodes dedicated to Spawn. Because I was, okay.
What?
So here's the thing. Spawn is going to hit 300 issues by the time this episode comes out. And
Still going strong.
Still, I mean, it's
still going.
Still going.
It's still technically
Let's put it that
producing
way.
new content.
Yes, and that
Strong is a bit of a strong word.
That is an achievement because the only other self-owned independent comic series to hit 300 issues is a book by Dave Sim called Cerberus, which is about a talking aardvark, and it's a fantasy, slice of life weirdo comic that we're never going to talk about on this channel. Outside
Except for
of
just now.
right now, and that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe a little later too, because it's also on the cover of Spawn number 10.
Oh, I wondered what was happening there. I'm like, you mean that thing right there?
Yeah, that thing right there.
But that's a
Cerberus.
Spawn book.
It is a Spawn book, but it's an independent comic. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Spawn phenomenon because Spawn's hitting 300. I only really read the first 100 issues of Spawn, so I thought, like, I'll go look back on them. And so I was rereading Spawn, and Tiffany turns to me and she goes, like, was Spawn that big of a deal? Like, it looks like he kind of was. Like, that there was a big deal of Spawn.
Like when it came out, I'm assuming?
From 92 to 97, Spawn was a phenomenon. And so we're not going to talk about like the story of Spawn.
Right,
We
we already
may
did
touch
that.
upon it.
Yeah.
But we kind of did that. But we're going to talk about the phenomenon that is Spawn.
Right.
Because
You keep calling it a Spawn phenomenon and not the Spawnomenon.
Or the
And I'm really disappointed
Phenomospawn.
in you.
I'll let our amazing audience decide which one this should be, a Spawnomenon or a Phenomaspawn. But let us know. That being said, Spawn was, in effect, a phenomenon that could only really have occurred in the early 90s. Because of its runaway success and its, talons in
brooding.
everything. Like, well, that too. Like the fact that it hit at the right time. Because, like, Spawn didn't just happen to be a best-selling comic book, which it also, of course, was. Spawn number 1, when it debuted, 1.7 million units sold.
That book's a monster.
It was a juggernaut. It
Yeah.
eventually, the sales did dip, but then swell back up because Spawn became this phenomenon. And it really has a lot to do with what a brilliant, savvy businessman Todd McFarlane is. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Todd and Spawn and the phenomenon that was Spawn.
Okay.
So Spawn, 1991.
Weird question. Was Todd working on other stuff prior to Spawn?
Oh,
Or was
yeah.
that like,
Spawn
I
is-
have this character that I've been developing for years and I'm finally getting it to the market?
Right. He also worked on Spider-Man, and that's really where he became a household name. He was also doing crazy poses. He was doing things that physically he was incapable of being able to do, but he was there doing it on the page.
Right.
It looked amazing. So suffice to say, McFarlane became a superstar artist by doing the opposite of what the artists who were working on those titular characters were doing at the time. And it was, of course, him and Rob Liefeld and other amazing art, Eric Larson and Mark Silvestri and other artists of that time and that ilk. Jim Lee, of course. McFarlane was the most loud at Marvel Comics about his distaste for the system and how it was functioning. It was really a testament to where he was going to go as an entrepreneur at the time. He tried to formulate a Marvel Artists Union, which they were not happy about.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I would imagine not.
Yeah, because for him, he was like, I hold all the cards.
Right.
Like, you don't have a comic without me.
Yeah, you do, but you can't sell them, and I can. And the reality is, you're not selling Spider-Man, you're selling my art through the vehicle that is Spider-Man. And that's the real treasure that I know I possess and that you can't control. And actually, they tried to appease him by giving him Spider-Man, the title with no adjective, where he got to write and draw it, and arguably, it was dumb, but it looked amazing.
He had just totally
unfettered access and control.
control.
He did still have an editor, and
Well,
that
yeah.
editor did tell him like not to do certain things. McFarlane was a superstar artist who's like, I hold all the cards and I control my own destiny, and so he strong-armed all of his other fellow artists into like leaving their nest egg
Yeah.
and making like their 4% off of the books that were being sold, which of course, by the way, unprecedented sales. Heretofore never reached again sales. And McFarlane's like, the reason they're selling? You, me, us, our art, not the characters. Nobody cares about that.
Not the writing,
Not the writing, not the dialogue, not the character, not the fan base. No, it's us and our art. And so McFarlane strong-armed, and if you want to watch that story, he tells it better than I do, where he and the other Image creators left Marvel and formed Image.
Right.
He had Spawn in his back pocket from like when he was a kid. He originally had the idea that Spawn was an alien, but he looked pretty much exactly the same. And then he's like, no, he's from hell.
That tells you a little bit about the origin or genesis of the character.
Yeah.
It's a cool drawing
And it
before
doesn't
it's
matter.
anything else.
Yeah, right. At the
Before
beginning,
there was a story.
there was a cool drawing. Yeah, because there's nothing about the early Spawn concept art that doesn't have story. It's just like, sketches that says alien. It's just cool looking.
Yeah.
I would love to see the first image that he drew himself of Spawn.
I'll show it to you. It looks exactly like this, only it was more blue themed.
Oh.
Instead of red, it was blue, and it looked like this.
I just want a sketch of where he's just like, I got this idea for a character, and it looks like shit, and he's like, no, there's something there.
No, it looks like a 10 years earlier version of Spawn. Like,
All right.
he was like, I nailed it.
Yep.
Like
Got it.
from the like
Stop drilling, you hit oil.
yeah, from the design on the chest to the cape to the like flare, like he had it down and he executed it flawlessly. And thus Spawn came on the scene in 1992 and it set the world on fire. And by world, I mean the comic book world.
Right, yeah.
So what happened to the other artists
does look
that
great.
he convinced to leave Marvel?
They
They
formed Image and they
Yeah.
owned their own characters. They launched with their own characters.
They made Savage Dragon and
Youngblood and Wildcats.
Gen 13.
Gen 13 came a little later, but still Gen 13. Yeah. Here's how the structure of Image worked. It's like a bunch of guys, like less than 10 guys, who all have their own characters and own 100% of those characters, and thus earn 100% of the revenue made from their books.
But only their books.
Right. Yeah, it's not like Larson gets a percentage of Spawn.
Right.
So, but that's okay, because as long as your book is selling and your book is doing well, it has a home here at Image and will also make you a boatload of money. So like, and indeed it did, because they're also making Image at the same time that the speculators market is at the, like the height of its fervor.
It was the easiest time ever to create a new comic book
entity.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that like the rules that were in place with Image were also conducive to where the comic book industry kind of should be going.
Like they didn't have the Comics Code Authority.
They did not. No Comics Code Authority, and also creators' rights were like chief. You owned it. Image was more just like a publishing house that was a vehicle to get your book out there.
Right.
But if you weren't happy, you could take it someplace else.
Yeah.
And indeed they did. Hell, Jim Lee, who was always kind of like a company man, like he was always happy, like working for someone and having a steady paycheck and being able to like feed himself consistently on a regular basis. He was the guy.
You madman Jim Lee.
Literally, yeah, I know, what a maverick. But he was the one that took the most convincing, but ultimately left with McFarlane and really made Marvel like shit themselves. Because they were like, what? But he was happy! Like, he was the only one who didn't complain! And ultimately, like, he does Wildcats and he helps with like Wildstorm, which is, all of them have their own production studios within Image to make their companies. So like, McFarlane has Spawn and he makes McFarlane Productions, and Larson has his own group, and Jim Lee creates Wildstorm that produces the Wildcats and other Jim Lee ancillary character universe books. But ultimately, Jim Lee would sell Wildstorm wholesale to DC in exchange for a editor position in the company. See, that man was as savvy
smart.
as McFarlane. McFarlane's like, my talent and my ability and my savvy will get me far. And Jim Lee's like, and I know that if I want to succeed in this industry, I need to be signing the checks.
Yep.
And I also need to be in one of the two companies.
Yeah. Well, I need to cash in also at like the right time. Like,
Yeah.
McFarlane thinks this gravy train's never going to stop.
Yes.
And I know it will stop.
Not only
and
is
I
it
need to
going
get
to-
off before it does.
Yeah, not only will it, but in less than 10 years. So I got to get out.
Yep.
And indeed he did, and he's leveraged a tidy little position for himself at DC. So yeah, he's good forever. And he's also Jim Lee.
Right.
Oh no, like sales are going down. Well, I guess I'll just draw another Batman cover. And the problem was with Image and with the people who worked there was that like, okay, like Rob Liefeld's like this kid who's like between 19 and 25. And they're like, hey, I know you're used to drawing like X-Force and Cable and Deadpool and stuff, and you're making like 4% off of the sales of this book that's selling like 500,000 units. Well, here's 100% of the same sales, but on your book. So he's writing him a check for like $500,000 for this month's book. And he's like, and he just went nuts. And, you know, like, there's a great
He bought
story.
himself like 3 Ferraris.
Yes. Yeah, he like bought Ferraris, he went off to Malibu, like he went nuts. They used to do like the convention scene. The Youngblood team had this like stupid car, like a kind of like a turtle van, but for the Youngblood.
Yeah.
He had
Oh
them
my
make
God.
one that he would bring to conventions, and you could like take your picture in it. But he also had it built just to look like it. So it wasn't built to be taken apart easily. So it was just a mess. Now it is rotting away at a mini golf course in California. And he lost a boatload of money on it, but he didn't care because he made double that amount next month. Oh,
Right.
by the way, his books were notoriously behind schedule.
Well, that's the other thing about founding your own comic book company. There's no rules. No one's. If the whole idea is like no one's going to tell me what to do, it's going to be chaos.
Yeah, because like you're not going to be like paying your taxes or like, you know.
Yeah, like financing all the stuff that goes into making a comic book.
Right.
Well, no,
Which
I
they
mean,
did. It's not like
hire
the
accountants.
Well, they
and
were able
things.
to
Yes.
publish it.
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
able, and the books looked good. That's the thing, is that like the books were printed on glossy paper. Like they spared no expense.
Yeah, and you
those
could get
books.
away with delays because everyone was like clamoring for it.
Yes, they were clamoring for it. The speculators were all like desperately buying up every copy anyway.
Yeah.
And these artists were celebrities within the industry, so like you had a built-in audience that was constantly, you know, coming over. Spawn, separate from Image, was the launching pad for McFarlane's career. You know, he's like, I'm an artist, right? And all I want to do is draw. And he tells you that every time. Every interview you see, every conversation you have with him, he's like, it's all about the art. It's all about creating. And it's all about drawing. And if I draw, I die. It's like, yeah, well, then why did you spend $3 million on Mark McGuire's home running baseballs?
Because
What? Well, I also like baseball.
Well, here's the thing. McFarlane was a hockey fan, but he's also a sports nut. And McFarlane was leveraging his Spawn property into a successful action figure line. He launched Todd Toys very shortly after Spawn became a household name in the comic book world. And the figures themselves were like Image. They had a lot of flash. They were really well sculpted. Whoa,
It's got hair.
yeah, Malbolgia here from Todd Toys. Now, what's funny about Todd Toys, of course, is that around the same time Barbie or whatever company was launching Mattel was launching a Todd doll, and he was worried that he was going to get Todd Toys mixed up with the Todd doll, which nobody bought or cared about.
What?
So within like less than a year, Todd Toys became McFarlane Toys because,
Yeah.
of course, I'm also not gonna not name the company after me.
Right.
Like, you could have called it Spawn Toys, but he's like, no, it's me Toys.
because I make them.
But what's
That's
amazing?
so funny.
But by the way, like, they also looked better than most of the toys on the market.
yeah, this looks
they
great.
had like,
I mean, it's hideous, but like it's a well sculpted hideous.
absolutely. But these toys, like, were really kind of like for him the end game. And he,
What?
Yeah,
This is what it was all leading to?
for him, it was like, I want to be a toy manufacturer.
Well, this is what people play with.
I guess because toys.
You read a story and it's over. But you
Yeah.
play with a toy and the fun keeps going.
I
Oh,
don't think
you write
that's
your
it.
own stories.
Yeah, there's no way he gave a shit about that.
No, to me, what that is like, God, I hate like ideas and story and dialogue. I just want to like make a thing that looks fucking cool.
That is so penetratingly insightful because, like,
And with a comic, I gotta do all that shit. With a toy,
Yeah.
you just make the thing, and then you produce it in mass.
The comic's story is so surface level.
Yeah.
It boggles the mind. I spent prep to make this episode by reading all 100 issues of Spawn.
Oh
I did not
God.
read the side book Hell Spawn. I did not read the 3-issue Angela miniseries. I did not read Curse of the Spawn. I just read the first 100 issues of
Right, the
Spawn
main
A lot of Spawn
in
title.
72 hours, and I feel like I've gone insane because like the decompression. Thy name is Spawn. The story of Spawn. Like Spawn is about 5 characters. Spawn, his wife, kinda. She's more like a MacGuffin.
Right.
Spawn's friend Terry, who is now stooping his wife, and the 2 detectives Sam and Twitch. That's who Spawn is about. You get the entire cast within the first 4 issues of Spawn. Violator's in it and should technically be like the Joker of the Spawn universe. Incidental. Like, he's in it and he is an antagonist, and
Right.
he eventually has a motivation to hate Spawn, which, by the
Yeah.
way, entirely fabricated like later on. You assume based on the movie or the cartoon or, you know, your own fabricated action figure stories that like Violator has a real fundamental problem with Spawn, and in fact they later on establish it that like Violator doesn't like Spawn.
Yeah, this is Violator versus Spawn.
Well, yeah, and you get that within the first few issues.
Yeah.
But like
you don't know why.
Violator's motivation for hating Spawn is because like, why would the devil, or Malbolgia, who's only the devil of the 8th circle of hell, why would he pick human souls to do his bidding and his like highest priority work when he has demons? Like, I'm from
Right.
here.
Demons
Right.
gotta be
Why are you
better.
gonna contract out? So his whole thing is like, I'm gonna prove that Spawn is inept. But that's not really his story. Violator shows up and then fights Spawn.
Uh-huh.
And then later in the series, he develops this kind of like problem with Spawn.
Right.
So there's no actual plot.
Well, the
There
actual
are little
plot...
plots that are peppered throughout. Like, Spawn wants to kill Jason Wynn to get back together with his wife and reclaim his humanity. He's not going to be able to accomplish any of those things because most of those things are the impetus behind the book existing.
Right.
Yeah, if you got it, like,
There's
what's
no
next?
Spawn, so
Right.
that's never going to happen. But it's also an independent comic book, and anything could happen, so you're tricked into thinking that maybe it will, and because it's like a superhero comic, but it's really not, we're going to like throw a monkey wrench into those plans at every turn. There are at least 5 scenes where Spawn has a big weapon that would never exist in reality, and he's charging it up, and he's talking to his mentor, Cagliostro, and he's going to be like, I'm going to kill Jason Wynn. And then something happens and he doesn't do that. Or he goes to Wynn's house or office and attacks him and threatens him, and then Wynn says something that makes him not do it. That thing is almost invariably, I'm going to kill Wanda Blake because I know that for some reason you really care about this person. And then we start the whole damn thing over again. And you're like, ah! Like, if you're reading it month to month, or month to every other month, or month to every other month, then you're kind of like, oh, right, yeah. Like, you're kind of like, oh, cool, right, yeah. Like, it's not hard to lose your place in this series.
Yep.
But then he throws another character at you. Like, here's a crazy Bible-thumping lunatic who sawed off with his own arm to show his devotion to God, and he makes a cybernetic suit that can never exist. His name's the Curse. And the Curse has a convenient action figure that, oh, no, wait. Did you just invent the Curse just to make an action figure of him?
No.
What?
Tremor, same deal. There's this crazy looking, like, terror dog looking monster that comes out of the ground, and he actually is a guy who got, like, cybernetic enhancements to make him into this killing machine. And oh, look at that, there's also a Tremor figure. And you're like,
Wait a minute.
and if you're reading it in the context of knowing, like, when these figures all came out, you're like, hey, I think that every new character you're inventing is just an excuse to sell more toys.
I think this is He-Man.
Yeah, it totally is He-Man.
Yup.
And that's the thing is that, like, hey, listen, you're Todd McFarlane, you own it all.
Yeah.
And if you're like obsessed with owning it all, you're like, yeah, well, I want to make toys. I know that's the sweetest plum. Why don't I just become a toy manufacturer and sell them myself?
Real money's in
perfect.
toys.
Yeah.
Toys, that's the ticket.
Well, and let me getting back to the Mark McGuire thing.
Yeah, let's bring it full circle here.
He bought all those balls and got on TV, and he got in like New York Times and magazines where it's like this comic book publisher bought all these baseballs.
Isn't that crazy?
I don't know who makes toys. I don't pay attention to that crap.
Yeah.
But I did just hear about this guy who's like an up-and-coming toy manufacturer, and he has enough money to buy those totally inflated value balls, so maybe I'll hire him. And indeed they did. So he got those licenses from those companies by being that shrewd and intelligent.
Yeah.
Then, of course, what's next? McFarlane wants to have Spawn everywhere at this point. It's the early to mid-90s. Well, what's next? Well, I gotta start working on that cartoon show. And I want it to be my show because I own the character. So it takes him like years to develop the HBO animated series, but it does inevitably come out. To some acclaim, by the way. It's an Emmy Award-winning show.
Why, though? What did it win the Emmy for?
Best animated series over an hour. Now he's not just a successful comic book publisher, he's also a successful toy manufacturer and an Emmy Award-winning TV series producer. And what's next? Movies. Naturally. So they fast-track that Spawn movie. Thing about movies, especially in the early 90s, McFarlane can't control that. McFarlane doesn't have total ownership of what they're doing. This is 97 when this movie comes out. So it's in the development during the time when they're making like Batman Forever. So like, yeah, and that's a pretty respectful piece of cinema that's, you know, honoring its source material.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and everyone looks fondly on it, too.
I mean, listen, like that was the time, I think the same year, you know, The Phantom came out before that. Like, no one's making...
Billy Zane's The Phantom?
That's correct. And it's not like, you know, the renaissance of comic book movie adaptations like Steve Niles' 30 Days a Night. You know, he's like, I want to make a movie. I wrote this script about vampires in Alaska. Nobody wants to buy it. Well, I guess I'll turn it into a comic book, and then that'll become like an award-winning comic book series. And now all these movie studios want to make properties out of these comic books, so they option my comic book and made me an executive producer, you know, to maintain the integrity of the comic book. And so now
Of the vampire comic book.
Yeah. Now I have more ownership and control over this thing than I would have if I just played ball.
Yeah.
So Todd missed the boat on that one thing, but he's still Todd freaking McFarlane and has a successful toy line still and a 300-long running comic book series.
Right.
And it was hitting at the hype of the time. Like
That's the thing, is that Spawn could not be stopped. There is an Iced Earth album that is Spawn themed. Remember the metal band from the 90s, Iced Earth?
No.
Yes.
Well, I do, because you bet your boots I bought that album and have it in my car and I listened to it on the way over here. Here's the thing. It's like Metallica.
Like Discount Metallica.
It's like Discount Metallica. And it's literally based off of the first 10 issues of Spawn. So each track is like issue 1. There's a whole Angela song. And like for some reason they don't say the names of the characters. My assumption is that they legally were not allowed to do that. But like Capullo's Spawn is on the cover of the album, like on the box art. You know, so Spawn fever was high.
Yeah.
Action figures, comic books, multiple comics, crossover comics, Batman Spawn, Wildcat Spawn. The only thing that Todd
Everyone wanted a piece of Spawn.
Everybody wanted a piece of Spawn because Spawn was a high-selling book and was a household name. Cartoon show, Emmy Award-winning cartoon show. Everyone knew Spawn, who was plugged into the pop culture zeitgeist at the time.
Yep.
Like, you didn't have to just be reading comic books to know who Spawn was.
Exactly. You're like, oh, do you mean that show? Like, all you have to do is just go into a room where people consume media and go, Spawn. Oh, you're talking about that horrible movie? Or you're talking about that show that I kind of enjoyed? Or you're talking about that comic book series? Or those toys I see a lot of?
Or that album?
Or that album?
That great metal album.
That great album. I gotta tell you, it's a guilty pleasure. It's probably because I listened to it so much.
That's like listening to the Mortal Kombat soundtrack. There's some good songs on there.
Oh, yeah.
Multiple Spawn video games, Super Nintendo, the PlayStation, Spawn video games. So he also got into that avenue as well. I don't believe he had much control over those, but of course he didn't give a shit about that.
No.
So,
Not
you
at
know,
all.
the Spawn Genesis game or Super Nintendo game, it's just, he runs across the thing, shoot the guy.
Yeah.
You know, it's just Double Dragon, but with Spawn, you know?
I mean, how
Yeah, what else is it
deep
gonna
are you
be?
going to make a video game at that time?
Do you fight the Violator and shit?
Yeah. You fight all of them. Overkill, Violator, Tremor. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
That's not bad.
Yeah,
Is the art good?
It's, for the time, it's fine.
Wait,
Okay.
at the end of the game, do you like finally get to
You fight my
Jason
bullshit.
Wynn? No, Jason
and
Wynn.
just put one between his eyes, just a guy.
No, you get up there and it's just like, but wait, you didn't get all of the secret things in the game.
Yeah, and it distracts you and then moves you. Yeah, each level ends with Jason Wynn, but then another character shows up and gets in the way. And that's how
Very
you get
true to
all
the
the
I'm
other Temple
almost gonna
Guardians.
get him.
Yeah. Yeah, Jason Wynn shows up, ha, and then the Curse shows up, and then Tremor shows up, and then Overkill shows up, and then Violator
Jason wins
shows
in
up.
another town or whatever.
Yeah, we're sorry, Spawn, but Jason wins in another castle. Yeah.
So Spawn had the gimmick, right, where he
Yeah.
only has so much power.
Ah, yes.
Did
The power meter, 50.
did anybody do anything with that outside the comic? Did the movie have that element?
The cartoon had it.
The cartoon had it. The
cartoon
cartoon is
had
the
it.
most faithful adaptation of the comic, right?
It's almost like a better distillation of the comic.
It's like better than the comic.
Well, because the comic...
It only had a certain amount of time.
Well, yeah, and but even the cartoon cut corners. The comic has 20 issues of story in 100 issues, and the cartoon has probably like 4 episodes of animation in 12 episodes. And at the very least, there are like arcs. You know, like Billy Kincaid is a villain they introduce in one issue and kill at the end of it. In the cartoon, in the first season, Billy Kincaid is the antagonist. Like he's the thing to get or beat.
Yeah.
Which is
Makes a little more
interesting
sense.
and cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
A little more conventional storytelling.
And-
but at the same time, like, it's not that deep.
no, but like it doesn't have to be. Not everything has to be. And I'm not saying I'm not going to ding Spawn for not being deep. McFarlane does have an idea about what he wants to do with Spawn. But he's also, and that's the thing, is that you don't know like which part of him is like the hack who doesn't really want to write anything and just wants to see cool shit,
Right.
or
Which part of him really cares?
well, no, which one of him is the shrewd businessman who like knows he has to do some of this shit in order to get to the thing he wants. So like, okay, Spawn, when it first starts, he looks like a superhero. They reference Youngblood, Savage Dragon shows up, Chapel, crossovers, all that crap, demons, explosions, stuff like that. You know, he's and oh, my wife, and I miss her, and blah. By the time we get to like issue 70 or 80, all that is gone. They throw most of it away. The conspiracy, because the whole thing is like, in issue like 5 or whatever, Spawn breaks into a secret government facility that has a bunch of Jason Wynn's like experimental weapons, which he's going to use because he knows he has a power meter. So he steals those weapons, and Wynn finds out, and he's like, no one could have known about this facility except for Terry Fitzgerald because he's too close, which is why Terry Fitzgerald gets onto Wynn's radar.
Okay.
So that's like and so you got like Terry who wants to take down Wynn, and you got Wynn who's like glad-handing Terry because he wants to bring him in close so he can kill him. But then Spawn keeps getting in the way of killing Terry because he knows that like Terry keeps Wanda happy, and he's also his best friend. No, the pathos.
Jesus.
So you got that going on.
Yeah.
And of course you got Sam and Twitch, and how they were actually the cops who busted Billy Kincaid the first time when he killed the senator's daughter, who actually was a vengeance kill for Jason Wynn. And so there's all this all that is thrown away by like between issue 60 and 75.
With extreme
Because,
prejudice.
like, you know what? I've stopped caring.
Well,
and
I've done everything I
and
can
really,
do with
it
that.
should have all been wrapped up in about 12 issues.
Right.
But it took probably 60 issues to even slightly address some of those things.
Yeah.
It's just constant scenes of Sam and Twitch going like, reiterating Billy Kincaid's popsicled body chained over their desk is invoked so many times. I'm like, that's issue 4.
This is so long
Yeah,
ago.
this was like years ago.
But for them, it was.
Yep.
It's 5 years
just
later.
happened.
Spawn dies in issue 1 in 87 and comes back in 92. So is it 92 for like 10 years?
Yes.
I guess. But they
Yeah.
do refer to it being years ago. And so like, you know, but Billy Kincaid and his whole like, what does it mean? Why did Spawn bring Billy to here? Like, who gives a shit? And ultimately, it's tied up with their chief. Their chief was like was an agent for Wynn,
Okay.
and that's how Billy got out. And so they want to take him down, but then he fires them, and then Spawn. There's a whole sequence where Spawn just he literally steals a bunch of files and then goes to people's offices and just drops them off. He goes to Sam and Twitch and he's like, your chief is involved and you need to like drop off this file to the press and he'll go to jail. And Sam's like, no, I'm going to keep this and use it to protect my friend and myself from our boss and use it as leverage against him to find out the bigger picture. And like he goes to Win, he's like, Win, I've got this file on you. And he's like, Terry, I've got this file on Win. And it's just this whole sequence where he's dropping files on desks and being like, I'm figuring it out. And you're like, you are a 8-foot-tall hell monster in a big red cape. You are not dropping off files and cracking mysteries.
No, I am.
Yeah, I am eternal.
But here's the thing, like, there has to be due process.
Like, where are you getting these files? Are you using a photocopy machine? Is he like, okay.
Well, yeah, there's still a library.
Yeah, but like, is he using his hell power for that, or is he just using nickels? Like, what's going
Only
on
if
here?
it breaks, he uses the hell power to fix it.
Yeah.
Hey, the machine's out of toner. Could you please?
Bah.
Sorry, Mr. What was your name?
Spawn.
Sorry, Mr. Spawn. I'll get to that in a few minutes. Just have a seat over there.
No time.
That chair isn't made of rotting corpses. I refuse. Blah. Another precious ounce of hellborn magic is spent.
And the pages just come out green and glowing.
Oh, damn it. No one's going to be able to read this.
They will. In hell.
There's...
I'll give this one to Malbolgia.
Yeah. Hey, got one on you, too. At the end of the day, Malbolgia is brought down by bureaucracy as well.
What?
Is that the
It's
message
hell.
of Spawn? Bureaucracy makes slaves of us all.
I mean, like, absolutely, McFarlane believes that, but it's like, but he also believes, like, as long as you're the one who's generating it, I guess it's okay.
right?
Is Malbolgia an acronym for someone at Marvel or DC?
Right.
Editor? No. Malbolgia is a level in Dante's Inferno. And that's where he gets the name from.
Yeah.
It's Malbolge.
Malbolge.
But yeah.
But what is his role in the book? Or what is his...
Well,
is he
Malbolgia in
is
the
he an
book,
avatar for something else?
I mean, probably. Malbolgia is the antagonist. And
Right.
in the beginning
Is he
of
like
Spawn...
McFarlane's dad or something?
I don't know. And I don't care to
Because he
figure it out.
calls
But, like,
Spawn like boy.
Oh, yeah. No,
Spawn's is McFarlane. Because, like, you know, he's got only so much talent. He keeps wasting it all.
well, and I'm a
doing other
slave
things.
to the industry. Maybe
Yeah,
Malbolgia's
slave to Malbolgia.
Maybe
I
Malbolgia's
own
like-
you. No, I'm going to Earth and I'm going to do my own thing.
he does start with an M, and Marvel starts with an M, so it could be
Malbolgia is
Marvel.
Marvel?
At some point or another, I was like, okay, well, I'm done. And I quit Spawn.
Yep.
Like, way too late. You know, like,
Uh-huh.
issue 75 or something.
You were like,
that.
all right.
And then I was only, like, 25 issues away from the end,
Yeah.
for me, of Spawn. And when I picked up issue 100, you know, there was this intricate plan of, like, Malbolgia unleashed this demonic other entity called the Urizen, who is reference to Urizel or Uriz from a William Blake poem. And he's basically a soul negator, and that the only thing that can stop him, you can't kill it, you can only, like, trap it. The only thing that can stop the Urizen from, like, annihilating the souls of humanity is for heaven to intercede and bind it. But in order to do that, it would need to send, like, all the armies of heaven to do it, and heaven can't act on Earth's soil unless hell proportionately does so as well. So if the Urizen is released and they can't prove who did it, and heaven has to send an army to Earth to stop it, then hell can send an army to Earth too to match the proportionate response. So Malbolgia's like, I'm going to kickstart the apocalypse by tricking them into stopping Urizen, and then I'll send my armies to start apocalypse.
Well, doesn't Heaven have something equivalent to Urizen? Why do they need a whole army to stop
Oh,
one thing?
well, because by the time Spawn wraps up, it becomes this, like, intricate web of stuff. Like, by issue 52 or 55 or whatever, Spawn has drained his power meter, goes back to hell. They give him these, like, markers that indicate that he's different, but literally he isn't. It's just that we got rid of the power battery thing.
Right.
And also we can sell 3 different action figures based on the new different looks that he's gotten.
Right.
And otherwise he's exactly the same. The idea is that, like, Terry has, like, a brain tumor, and so Spawn uses the last of his powers to cure him, and then goes to hell. And when he gets there,
I'm
he's
sorry,
like,
his powers can just, they're magic. They
Yeah.
can
Just
do
do
whatever.
anything.
he can do anything. He can change his appearance, teleport, make necroplasmic blasts.
The harder it is, or the more the harder a problem it is in real life, the more stuff it consumes.
Right.
Right. So curing cancer, that's a big one.
That's a big one. Yeah. It has to be.
Yeah.
Except he's only probably got like half an ounce of power left. He's just like,
check the book. It'll say how much was in the meter.
Yeah. So he goes to hell. They torment him. They take off his face. They pull out his heart, and they
They take his face off.
They take his face off, and he gets a new face. The visage of death is what they call it. Anyway, he leaves. He comes back, and he's got a new costume and a new look and a new attitude. And then, like, the spirit of the earth consumes him.
Oh, Gaia.
Yeah, more or less. And so, like, the spirit of the earth is like, so there's heaven, there's hell, and then there's earth. And it's not like that earth is a place. It's like there's 3 powers in the universe. It's heaven, hell, and earth.
I've just always been kind of neutral, and I'm sick of that shit.
Yeah. Well, also, Spawn is kind of like this rogue agent, and he's got all this power, so I might as well, like, use him.
Well, also, like, he's a man of the earth because he's a homeless person.
Well, and he's a human being. True, yeah, no. So Malebolgia launches Urizen. The armies of heaven are ready to leave, but God says don't go anywhere because I'm wise to what's going on here. Plus, I've got people on the inside. Angela comes back, so clearly McFarlane wrote Neil Gaiman a big fat check. They hadn't used Angela for a while. So Angela shows back up, and Spawn team up. They fight Urizen, and ultimately they like drag him into the earth, and he's like back. He's put away. Yeah. And so Malebolgia's plan to start the apocalypse fails, and it's revealed that he was the one who engineered it in the first place.
Sure.
And he becomes what McFarlane wants him to be, and what he was making him for like 10 issues before he realized he was hitting 100 issues and he needed something important and bombastic to throw away the status quo. Because what McFarlane really wants to do with Spawn is not the superhero bullshit. He wants Spawn to be this thing that comes out of the shadows and kills people who deserve to be killed. He wants to Boondock Saints up Spawn.
Right.
And so, like, for the latter half of the first 100 issues of Spawn, you get these stories where they're all self-contained.
Okay.
About people who do bad things, and then Spawn shows up and just messes them up.
Like, kills them.
Yeah.
And then the next issue is the same thing. And
So it becomes like episodic.
Yes, and that's what McFarlane wants to do, to the point where when McFarlane decided that he wanted to reboot Spawn, which he's been talking about in film since the first movie failed.
Right.
He's been talking about that for like 30 years.
Sure.
He's always, and he's never deviated from his pitch, which is, I want Spawn to be like a side character. Like, he's not even like the focal point. It's not a superhero movie, it's a horror movie where Spawn's like Jaws. You never see him, but he's there, and he's this force of nature that happens. And I'm like, I'm not going to see a Spawn movie with no Spawn in it. If he wasn't in development with this movie, he absolutely could have probably made an Amazon series or a Hulu series where Spawn was the thing. But he wants to control it all. And now that he's in a position where that's kind of where media is, you can kind of, he's like, I want to direct the movie and write the movie and produce the movie.
Don't you remember how much trouble you were having before?
No.
Creating everything, Todd? You got other people in because you didn't want to do it.
Remember, he fancies himself.
This time it'll be flawless.
So he's working with Blumhouse to make this low budget Jamie Foxx starring as Spawn.
Yeah.
So, which is to say, not starring because he won't really be doing or saying anything. Horror movie where it's really like one of these random issues where like bad things happen to good people. There's a scene.
And then Spawn shows up and...
There's an issue, nothing to do with anything. There's one issue where there's like a group of... It's the most dangerous game. It's a bunch of wealthy aristocrats in England who like... Okay. Their plan is they all did a ritual and blah, blah, blah. They're all part of this pact, and there's 12 of them, and they each hunt one of them and then eat that person, and by doing so, they eat their soul, and eventually there'll be one left, and that one person will be able to summon, and I believe it's Urizen. So it's like implying that Urizen's a thing.
Okay.
And then Spawn shows up, and he's like, nah, just kills all of them. And you're like, okay, but there's one that's nothing to do with any part of the plot, and it's there's this dead girl in an old dilapidated house, and there's like 3 douchebag teenagers and 1 bloody knife, and they're all gonna they're all turning on each other, and Spawn shows up. He's like, everybody sit down. Okay, you tell me what happened. And then one kid's like, a bunch of black people broke in and killed this girl, and Spawn's like. And he's like,
Guess
okay.
again,
Wrong audience.
motherfucker.
Right? But then he goes, okay, now you tell me what happened. And the other one's like, oh, and he tells like a less racist, but still equally racist, but plausible story. And he's like, okay, and then now you tell them what happened. Tell me what happened. And he's like, they killed her and then asked me to come here to help them get rid of the body. And he's like, okay, I believe you. Here's the knife. If you want to get out of here, you got to kill those guys. And he's like, okay.
Like fucking Jigsaw.
Yeah. So then he kills the other 2 kids.
Wow.
And they're all just like, you killed us, and you're full of shit. You didn't do that. And Spawn's like, I know. That's why he's the last one, and he's coming with me. And he drags the kid up the stairs to this creepy house, and you're like, what? And then that issue's over, and it never happened, and you never find out what happened.
Oh, you know what happened.
Oh, they demolish the house. Like, the next issue is like, neighbors are being interviewed, and they're like, oh, I always knew that house was a bad place with bad things happening to it. You're like, what? And you're like, it like all the stars aligned. I was like, that's what McFarlane has been wanting to do with Spawn since the beginning. Mm-hmm. He's always just wanted to be doing this.
He's a boogeyman.
Yeah, he wants Spawn to be a boogeyman and tell fucked up stories that only take about like 18 pages to tell.
Yep.
Where it's a fucked up thing and holy shit, I can't believe that happened, but then Spawn shows up and kills them at the end.
So, in a way, it's like if the Crypt Keeper was telling a story, but then the Crypt Keeper like also showed up in the story to like reap people.
In the Spawn animated series, every episode opens with Todd McFarlane like the Crypt Keeper opening each episode. So yes. Like, he'd be pretending to draw something, and then he'd go, hi, I'm Todd McFarlane, creator of Spawn. Oh. You know, the darkness has all kinds of fucked up things inside of it, and there's no escape from the... You're like...
That's what the movie should be. It should be like the crypt, like it's just like vignettes with Spawn coming out of the shadows.
And at the end of each one, Todd McFarlane turns away from his drawing board and goes, pretty fucked up, huh? But check this out.
Here's another tale of murder and mystery.
That is the status quo at the end. You know, he kills Malbolgia, he tells Heaven to fuck off, so like, now what's he gonna do?
Now he's gonna do what he always wanted to do.
Which is...
He's fulfilling his dream job.
And then
just
like...
killing bad people.
Yeah, and then he does...
He's fulfilling his dream job of being a murder hobo.
Right. There was another attempt, after they ended the HBO animated series, to make another animated series. It was called Spawn the Animation.
Okay.
Apparently...
As opposed to?
Yeah, as opposed to the last one, which was an animation. Presumably, there are episodes done. At the very least, it was cast and people recorded voice work for it. Mark Hamill, Keith David came back to play Spawn.
Wow.
In fact, Keith David is voicing Spawn in the Mortal Kombat video game. Because, of course,
character?
Spawn shows up in Mortal Kombat 11.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And Keith David has always been our Spawn.
Yeah. Well,
sounds like there's going to be a real Spawn push coming.
I mean, like, this is the most popular Spawn has been in probably 20 years.
Yeah.
Because Spawn has an appearance in a major video game, and he has a 300th issue coming out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all.
Maybe there'll be a movie next.
They keep talking about that movie, and I know that, like, there's a script, that there's a cast, that there is a budget, presumably, that there's a production company involved. The real concern, from what I understand, on the movie side, is McFarlane being director. That's been the problem.
They just need to get
from
him
the
to
beginning.
drop that.
You know what?
And then you could do a movie.
You know what makes me think that he wants to do this so badly? What? Besides the fact that he wants to control everything, Spawn the movie from '97 was directed by a first-time director. They'd never made anything else before that. Mm-hmm. Which is really apparent when you watch Spawn.
Right. You can tell.
They're infamous for making the recent CG Marmaduke film and several CG Garfield direct-to-DVD films that came out over the last
I didn't
couple
even know that was a thing.
It certainly is.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And his feature-length debut, Spawn. So, like, I think McFarlane's like, why shouldn't I direct the movie? Not only do I know everything about it, and I have had experience on the set, because McFarlane played, like, a bit bum in Spawn 97.
Yeah.
But I've also produced shows, and that guy who made Spawn knew less than me.
You know,
That's not why it failed.
There are options other than hiring someone who's never made a movie before and hiring you.
Right.
There is a third way, man. It's called hiring a guy with experience.
Nope.
It hasn't been tried yet with the Spawn franchise.
I
No,
don't
the
trust
vision
them.
is mine.
I don't trust them. Every time I do hire someone with experience, they create some, like, big character that I then don't have control over. So why would I ever let you do that?
Well, in the company that you created, that specified that, like, anything you create, you own. So, like, you kind of invited them to do that.
No, why would you? And of course they would do that. Like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And,
Yourself in the foot.
yeah. And Gaiman got the payday. He sold Angela to Marvel. Now she's Thor's sister. So, you know.
I love that. It's like the biggest fuck you to those.
Such a fuck you!
Oh, yeah, you're fucking...
Finally, I've got control over my own character. Yeah, I'm just going to sell it to Marvel for a pittance.
But
No!
you debuted
She
her
started
in a
in
Spawn
Spawn!
book.
But now-
Yeah, but you
whenever
said
I-
I own the thing that I created.
Yeah, his comment on it, by the way, is, why would I have any opinion about a creator doing something with a character that they own and control? Like,
Sure.
I learned from my past lesson that I'm not allowed to be upset with people.
Yep.
Because it makes you look like a
when
hypocrite.
I try and say that I own a thing that they created.
Yeah. McFarlane pitching McFarlane Toys or Todd Toys to distributors was this. The head of, like, Toys R Us and KB and whatnot would go to, like, this convention where, like, in a room there were all these card tables with prototype toys from these respective companies. And McFarlane didn't have prototypes because he didn't have a friggin' toy company yet. He had cool drawings of all the toys that were gonna come out from his wave. And everyone looked at his table like, are you out of your mind? Like, because he was just this jackass who showed up from the comic book industry, and they're like, trust me.
This is not how the toy industry works.
Yes. So,
This is not a toy.
Yeah.
You're showing me a picture.
right,
that's
of
a-
You
what,
are an artist.
of what you
This
think
is
this
what you
toy
do.
will look like. That's
Yeah.
not what the toy's gonna look like.
You stupid idiot.
So the
And then
head,
he came out with a toy just like, holy shit, the toy looked like that.
it really did.
He's screwing us over big.
The head of Toys R Us is walking through the, down the aisle looking at the things. His son is with them, who reads Spawn, and he's like, "This guy, you gotta get McFarlane. Like, you gotta get him." He's like, "These are drawings."
He doesn't have any toys, though.
He's like,
Billy,
we're a
you don't
toy
understand.
company.
right. And then his son is like, "Do you understand? The first issue of this guy's comic book sold 1.7 million." And he's like, "Signed." And the other guy's like, "Are you kidding me?" And so, like,
And then Todd slips the kid a 20.
right? Like, and I would not be surprised in the least if he was like, "You will get the next issue of Spawn for the rest of your life if you get your dad to sign on the dotted line." I mean, like, but here's the thing:
It worked for everybody.
it worked, and like
Kinda.
he did make toys. Like, it
And
wasn't
they
like,
do look like the drawings.
yeah, like he achieved it,
here's
and
the crazy
Toys R Us
part.
had the figures in the toys.
I never became aware of Todd McFarlane's line until he started doing movies.
Yes, the movie Maniacs line.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great line, where each wave was different iconic horror movie characters from movies.
Ah.
So it was
didn't know
like Freddy and Jason and
Yeah.
The ones that I specifically remember were the Cenobites, though.
yeah,
The Hellraisers.
yeah. Well, I think he made a whole deal
Like,
with
holy
Clive
shit,
Barker to make a
Cenobites action figure.
he made an
Yeah.
entire line with Clive Barker of like all these Cenobites.
Wow.
Yeah. He also worked with Kiss and made a whole line of Kiss figures.
Yeah.
When Grant Morrison wrote an issue of Spawn, he created a character named Anti-Spawn. And Anti-Spawn was literally a spawn created by Heaven as like a
Oh, yeah.
countermeasure to
Yeah,
Spawn.
like the Antichrist.
Yeah.
You know how you have Hell Spawn and Heaven Spawn?
Yeah. Well, they Anti-Spawn. So an Anti-Spawn, his logo is great. It's a Spawn logo with a circle and a slash through it. And Grant Morrison.
God damn it.
And by the way, the host, because it's just oh, and Heaven, according to Grant Morrison, is like it's got machines and cyber people and like robot characters.
Sure.
And like the Heaven central computer selects a character that needs to be remade and like superseded with the anti-spawn programming. They picked Jason Wynn, the most evil human being on the face of the earth.
Well, because Heaven is evil.
Because that's so funny, you see. Yeah, 'cause it's ironic. They brought him back after they renamed him for the Figure.
I mean, here's the thing. Redeemer's a much better name.
Yeah, it looks better on the box. So then we're going to change it. Cygor, freaking Tremor, Overkill. By the way, if you ever want to see the creation of Overkill, it's on video. It's on YouTube. It's a video where Stan Lee is hanging out with Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld. And Stan's like, hey there, superhero fans. I'm here with the rising stars, Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld, and they're titans of the industry. And we're gonna all create a character together. We're gonna watch these guys in their creative process. And they create Overkill. And back then they called him Overkill, but then McFarlane was like, oh, but then Rob Liefeld owns 50% of that character, so I'll change it and add a T, so now it's Overkill. It's a different character from what we created on that video.
Way to go, Todd.
Jesus.
Yeah, I called him Todd.
Oh, but it's great because basically you're watching these two artists go like, and wouldn't it be cool if he was a robot? He had this thing. And Stan's like, boy, you guys really are just bastions of integrity. Like, he's just making fun of them the entire time.
Yes.
So,
all right, so that's it. You're done. No, let's put a lot of chains on him, too.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to lose those chains. Those chains make the character much more compelling. Like, because literally, it's these two guys. McFarlane has openly talked about how, like, Stan Lee screwed over Jack Kirby and he is, like, the devil. And now he's, like, making a video with him. We're like, ha, ha, ha. And Stan's like, I'm friendly as a brand, so... But I am going to make fun of you, though, because, like, you literally took a meal ticket that was being a Spider-Man artist and threw it in my face, and then went and created your own company and told everyone you could do better. So, and now you're on this show with me, so I'm going to make fun of you. You were right, and you could, and in fact, the most damning thing, by the way, like, yeah, Marvel lost its biggest artists to a third publisher, right?
That didn't exist.
That didn't exist.
Yeah, and then started to outsell them.
Yes. Yes. Proportionately started selling Spider-Man numbers. Like, the saddest thing is for DC, because there were two publishers, Marvel and DC, as the top number one and number two. And then there were two publishers, Marvel and Image. And DC was still not quite able to outsell Image. And you're like, oh my God, that's the person that should be the most ashamed.
Yeah.
Especially considering the fact that the artists that left
Came
didn't
from
go to
DC. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
they
They left Marvel.
Some of them were working at DC, and then they left to go to Marvel, and then they left
And then
Marvel
they-
to go to Image.
So there was more talent at Marvel. There was enough talent at Marvel for two companies that outsold.
That
could
outsold
each
DC.
outsell DC.
Yes, which is like really kind of sad, and a really good indication as to where DC was in like the early to mid '90s.
Yeah.
Admittedly, fun concept. Like the pitch: man sells a soul, wants to see his wife.
Yeah.
Devil never reneges on deal, gets cool powers. Like, that's a pretty solid concept, and it's one that's really, really evergreen and easy to get,
Yeah.
and easy to sell. So, on the premise alone, Spawn works, and it's funny how badly McFarlane has different interpretations of like what Spawn means and is, and where he wants to take the character, and where he wanted the character to go in the first place, and like where he brought it versus where it ended up. And you know,
Is he kind of George Lucasing it up? Where it's just like, well, I always wanted Spawn to be this.
It's like
Kinda.
you never wanted that.
right, like
You literally never wanted
it
that.
doesn't
I
seem
saw
like
it.
that, but
I
here
watched
it
it
is.
happen. I saw it happen.
Don't tell me. It
Don't
didn't
tell me
happen.
you always wanted this.
Please. I mean, yeah. I mean, in some respects, the reality is like anyone who owns and creates everything that they have, they're going to lose sight. Inevitably, that's what
Well,
happens.
you know what? It's also just fucking easier. If it's just like a series of adventures
Right.
that are self-contained,
Yeah.
where he just does the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Well,
Then
then it
writing
doesn't have
this-
to have an end.
It doesn't have to have an end. It doesn't have to have this intricate storyline with all these plot points being balanced and juggled. And who has time for that?
Right. Well, and who's going to pay attention for long enough to see it through to the end,
Right.
if indeed we reach that place?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the people who keep reading up until Spawn 300, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well, and Spawn 300 is going to be, like, I assume it's part of the narrative, but also there are going to be, like, mini stories in there. So I'm reading it. I'm gonna check it out because, like, why not? It'll be the first time I jump back into Spawn in 200 issues. You know, when you grew up with that kind of thing, you were kind of like, you didn't really think about what it meant or how like precious or rare it was. You just assumed it just happened to the things you liked. You know, because I was reading Spawn when it was a comic, so I'm like, oh, like naturally, if you like a thing enough, eventually there will be it'll get huge, and there'll be a movie and a cartoon show and a video game and action figures. It's like, no.
Nah.
And like, not only is that never going to happen, but it's so especially rare for something like Spawn.
Yeah.
Something that is like wholly owned and controlled by its creator, and that like they can maintain its destiny and actually like hit a trajectory. You know, McFarlane's like, I want to make toys, and he did. Spawn was a hell of a thing that like I can't believe now in context as an adult happened.
Well, like, and worked so successfully.
This well. But let us know in the comments down below, what's your favorite version of Spawn? Movie, cartoon, action figure, video game, comic book? If comic, which comic and which era? Because there's so much Spawn. The thing about it was, like, the thing that really told me that Spawn was a phenomenon, not just like the fact that my wife was like, I'm starting to get the impression that Spawn was kind of a big deal, was my mom knew what Spawn was.
Whoa.
My mom was like, hey, Spawn. Why do I know what that is?
Tell me about this Spawn thing.
Because you haven't told me about it, but
I know it. Yeah, like, but I know what it is. And I'm like, yeah, Mom, it's a thing.
It's a thing. All right, you wouldn't approve.
Okay. Let's open up this can of worms, Mom. Sit on the couch.
Oh, no, she took me to see the movie.
Oh, really?
Yep. She will never take me to another movie after that again.
Really?
Not because it was, like, inappropriate.
I was going to say, I didn't think that.
No, she was just like, it was so stupid.
Oh, well.
And you're like, you don't have any idea.
You don't even know,
This is fantastic.
Mom. No, by that point, I was like, this is very bad. Like,
I was aware enough.
There were a few moments where I was like, because here's the thing, it's a movie made for you, right? So, like, you know, people are like, hey, there's Stan Lee. Back then, it was like, hey, there's Todd McFarlane. There he is in the fight scene. Like,
I've seen him in the back of the book all the time.
Yeah. Well, and I was reading Wizard, and Todd McFarlane used to write a column for Wizard in the back of every magazine for a while.
Okay.
And so, like, I read those, so I knew the names of all, like, the producers and, like, the guys who, like, worked on the special effects. Like, the head of special effects was Steve Spaz Williams, and I knew that they named the stupid dog in Spawn after him. I'm like, hey, there's Spaz. He's named after the head of the CG department or whatever. By the way, Spawn fails on every conceivable level. Not only does it have no subtlety, and any element of like interest and intrigue is like out the window, but like there's also a cute dog and a little kid. Blow me. The man really did know his shit. And he still does today. And he is like the closest thing. People are talking about, like, you know, who's the new Stan Lee? Like, McFarlane is kind of like a more modern day Stan Lee. The good and the bad. You know, like,
for better or worse.
For better or worse. Like, he is an entrepreneur. He sells himself. Like, but what's amazing is McFarlane is also smart enough to be like, I'm not the brand. Spawn's the brand. But I'm also inexorably tied to it. So it's like, I come with it, but Spawn I can sell. Like, no one's buying like a Todd McFarlane face pin or a shirt with his name on it. But like, everyone wants a Spawn thing.
I was gonna say, like, I really think Malboja is some sort of metaphor. Just because he's like, oh my Simmons, you poor pathetic fool. I've locked you into a deal that I can't lose. I've dealt with your kind millions of times, always begging for more and needing something. He's like an editor.
Yeah, I think that Malboja has to be a metaphor for Marvel Comics. That like the deal with the deal with the devil is selling your character, selling your creation, being owned by a corporation, not having control over your own character, your own destiny, if you will.
And them not caring about you, just caring about what comes out of it for
them. What you can do for me, what the benefits of the deal is.
They're almost like a network.
Yeah, no. You know what? Like, it's funny for all the ribbing and the making fun of. Like, every time I see Spawn, I'm like, oh, he's cool looking.
Yeah,
and the concept is solid. I just dig it.
Yep, it came from a very honest place as well.
There's also
artistically
a whole lot
honest,
of
yeah.
Artistically, well,
context,
conceptually.
Yeah.
which you dig.
I was very especially young when I was younger. I was very fascinated by Judeo-Christian mythology and religions in general. And like it didn't hurt that like while I was reading Spawn, I was also like kind of like unknowingly on a religious journey myself. And so it was fun to see like someone who was from the world that I wanted to be in to hold a hypercritical lens over the world that I was like forced to live in. And so like for that I was like, oh, that's like really interesting and kind of like counterculture, and it made me feel like dangerous for reading it. Even though like it is vacant in its like substance or it's like, you know, because at the end of the day, the lesson is like Spawn lives in the darkness and he's gonna friggin' kill you if you're a bad guy. But like,
yeah, there
there's
was no
nothing
message.
there's nothing about that.
Theologically bankrupt.
Let's
just say that.
That is so true. Spawn is theologically bankrupt.
If you want to put that on the back of the comic,
yeah, Spawn is theologically bankrupt.
ComicPop.
That is
Yeah, but it's from the heart.
right. Yeah.
the heart that it's going to rip out of your chest and
Yeah.
hold up in front of your face.
And there's some valid critique of the industry he was in at the time.
That's the thing, is that, like,
is relevant to that era.
It's almost like they were taking this bigger idea where it's like, I am criticizing religion and I'm using that as a metaphor for criticizing the comic book industry.
Yeah.
It's like, wait. Usually people are kind of talking about the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
But like, no.
No.
You're talking about the comic industry?
Yeah, that's what I'm really talking about.
That's a
Well,
little
that's my
overwrought.
religion.
Yeah. Yeah, and it gets a little mired. You know, like, there aren't any, like, I'd be hard-pressed to find a character in the Spawn mythos who, like, represents the company man. You know, the hired gun who were, I guess, Overkill, and he's, like, overdeveloped. Like, Overkill actually might be the best representative of, like, Marvel's reaction to Image forming, because, like, you know, it was creatively bankrupt in its origins. It's overly developed. It has this, and inexplicably designed, like, there's these decisions for Overkill, like, why? Why does he have, like, one cybernetic eye? Like, what is all of this supposed to be?
Right.
And, you know, then you look at, like, all the character revamps and redesigns and, like, status quo shifts that Marvel was doing during this time, and you're like, yeah, that's kind of a bloated, overly complicated representative of, like, what's wrong with your misinterpretation of what you lost. You know, like, we lost all of our biggest artists. What were they doing? What were they doing anyway? Yeah, just drawing, like, pouches and eye lasers.
I kind of wish Tiffany was here so that we could ask her, like,
How's the Spawn design?
well, her concept, not only of the Spawn design, but the idea of what Image started off with, and
Yeah,
where
Tiffany is
Image is right now.
Yeah, Tiffany is is not only an Image expert, but also is a, like, huge proponent of Image as a concept.
Right. The formation of
create
the
it,
company
you
to
own it.
her
Yeah.
is like a really good idea.
Well, and the fact is, I think ultimately McFarlane believed in the concept of Image,
Yeah.
but then used it for his own pursuits.
Greed.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, knew the only way in which he could thrive is if there was an environment where he could do these things. And so, since there wasn't one available, he created it.
He made
And
it,
he, like,
yeah.
manipulated the people around him into helping to engineer that reality. Now, that makes McFarlane, it's like a Machiavellian genius. And I don't want to necessarily give him that much credit.
Right.
Nor do I want to condemn him in that regard. But I also, like, can't deny it in any significant way.
Yeah.
Because he takes
kind of come out that way.
and he also wants to take credit for all those things. Like, I did strong arm all these guys into doing this, and I did, like, really launch and propel Image into what it was. Like, if you want to take ownership of where Image came from and what it is, then you also have to take the criticism that you abused that system so that you could become, like, a toy manufacturer.
Right. Like, as surely as Jim Lee used it
Yeah, to become
get a better job at DC,
just-
you used it to create a separate entity that would make way more money for you than any of the other guys at Image were going to make.
Yeah. Because it wasn't like he was encouraging, you know, like Keith or Liefeld to make toys. He was like, well, gentlemen, I have a toy company now. Who would like me to make their toy?
and that's the
Yep.
thing. Like,
Yeah, look, Wetworks,
Youngblood,
the
they're
Max.
all back on here.
Yeah.
Well, I thought the idea was we were gonna make a living just
Selling
just
comics.
making our creations in comics.
Yeah, we're doing that too.
Oh yes, of
Yeah.
course. But if you really want the money,
Yeah, if you want the
good money,
real
that's selling
money,
toys.
you
Yeah,
gotta
and it's
own
not-
a separate thing that makes other people's stuff.
And it ain't Image toys. It's not like it's like, and if like a lot of Youngblood toys sell, you get 100% of the, no. You get a
yeah.
licensing fee.
That's how Image works.
Yeah.
This is McFarlane Toys. We have a slightly different business model.
Yeah, the difference is astronomical, and it benefits me 90%.
Yeah. But if you want to make your own Image toy company or fucking whatever, like, well, you can't call it Image because that's mine, but you can.
No, it's its
that's
own thing.
ours.
And also,
But
I'm sure.
I don't consent to you using Image that way. You'll have to create a Rob Liefeld toy company.
Right. Oh, also, I'm certain that there's some clause within a contract that we signed when we formed Image that you would not create a competing interest in my toy endeavor because he's that freaking clever and intelligent. So yeah, Spawn became a phenomenon just based solely on McFarlane's like desire and like sense of self-preservation and
It's a very American story.
yeah, and he's Canadian.
Really?
Spawn the Phenomenon, you know, it was more of a rambling kind of like tangents-filled episode where we just talk about like Spawn and what it means to like me and
stuff
how
in the
we,
mid-90s and how things were.
yeah, how Spawn fit into the greater like tapestry of the like 90s comic landscape. Anyway, we want to thank you so much for hanging out with us, and we'll see you guys next time with an all new episode of Back Issues. I'm Sal.
I'm Ethan.
I'm Ben.
So long. I remember like the
Like,
torment.
this one I
book.
want Spider-Man to like be eating a guy's heart.
It's like,
Because that would look dope.
can it
Okay,
be a
what
dream
if-
sequence?
What if instead it's a juicy apple?
No. That sucks.
That's not
It's gotta be a
anything what I
heart.
asked. It's got to be a beating heart, a living human heart.
How about a beat? It can be a nice juicy beat. I feel like we're compromising here.
I mean, that's more or less
It's
the
a little,
compromise.
it's closer, but like
Still not. It's like
I
you're
want 4 panels of the heart like expanding and contracting so you can
and
see
blood
the feeding
shooting
before
out of
he
the
eats it.
ventricles.
Okay,
Okay,
how about
all right.
one panel and it's not a heart, it's
A tomato, but you still get, the seeds and the juice coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I quit.